Hey everyone, welcome back for our West Kingdom finale review. I'm Nick.
I'm Vic.
And we are Envy Board Gaming. Today it is Viscounts of the West Kingdom. This one is a 1-6 player game. It is also produced by, or published by, Renegade Games. Shem Phillips, designer still, S.J. McDonald still. And Vic's going to tell you how to play, and we'll be back with our thoughts and review.
All right, we are set up here for a 2-player only game of Viscounts of the West Kingdom. In this game, players are going around the board. They're doing a number of actions. They can trade, they can build a building, they can place a worker in the castle, or they can transcribe a manuscript. Players will also have a chance to recruit townsfolk, put them in their deck, and they will also get to score points depending on the number of buildings they built and the transcriptions they've done and the different bonuses they've collected. But to start the game, I will show that we have a draft of a hero townsfolk and a bonus that you get, a starting card at the top. So the first player will go first in the game, but then the person who's second or the next player would have the first dibs of the draft here. So in this case, we're gonna have the green player go second. So the green player is gonna grab Emma here as the hero, and they get the bonuses depicted on the starting card. It tells you where your Viscount is going to go to start the game. So the green player is going to end up on action space number 4 to start the game, which is right over here. These are randomly put out according to the player count side. It actually tells you on the board how many players that side is for. So I'll take that. I get 2 stone, 2 gold, and 2 inkwells. I also get 3 coins, 3 debt, and a deed immediately to start the game. The debts and deeds are distributed, and then you only have a certain amount per player because they are an endgame trigger of prosperity or poverty. So in this case, we would take the deeds or the debts that we are owed according to the starting card before we allocate those 12 cards, so you don't start with a limited deck. And because we're playing with 2 players, that's why we have only 12 debt and deed cards. And the card itself actually tells you how many cards, how many debts and how many deeds should go out, depending on the player count. So in that case, we've only put 12 out here for players to draw from. The deck is unlimited though, so even if the deck has run out and the end game is triggered, you still play one final round so that the players always get a chance to have an equal number of actions. So in that case, you can always collect more deeds and debts even if the deck has run out. It's just an end game trigger, so it tells you when to end the game. So to start the game, players will grab that hero. They will shuffle that hero into their deck, and if there is any immediate bonus, they could take it, but in this case, it's an ongoing thing that will be played out. So we just shuffle it in there to our deck, and my opponent would pick a card, and the remaining hero goes away. You don't get to play with that hero in the game. And they would also take their starting resources. I've already placed this out for the green player according to what hero they chose, Emma's starting card there. And the starting card actually gets flipped over, and it is a reference for the end of game scoring, and also a reference for a collision that happens, and different rewards gained for booting a player off of the castle, which I'll explain in a moment. And that would just go out beside your, on the left side of your board for reference throughout the game. And you have your resources here. So to start the game, players will draw 3 cards. Your hand is always 3 cards unless you have gained an ability that gives you a +1 symbol that is shown. All the symbols are handily printed on the back of the player manual. So if you're ever confused or don't know what it means, it's all printed there. So the hand limit is also on your player board as well, which I find very useful. You'll see if you remove this workshop, you actually get +1 in your hand. So anyways, before we get there though, I don't want to get ahead of myself. You will put your Viscount out according to where your starting card was. So this person will put it on number 3, the red player, number 3 right here. and you're going around this way. There's arrows actually printed on the board that tell you the direction you can go with your Viscount. You can't ever go against the arrow. You must follow the arrow around as you're going. How do you move? Well, you're going to choose one of the 3 cards you have drawn, and the movement value of your Viscount is actually printed on the top left. It also doubles as the cost of that particular townsfolk, and the cost is something you would pay if you're ever recruiting one from the center here, from the village, or if you're discarding or dismissing somebody, you would also pay that cost as well. Another thing is if you are destroying a card, which is a broken card symbol, if you're ever doing that action, you would gain the value of that card that's printed on the top left. So that is something to keep in mind throughout the game. They have different meanings. But in this case, it's going to be the movement of my Viscount. So if I chose the 1, I would only get to move the horse meeple 1, and so on and so forth. 2 would move. And you can always augment that action by paying an extra $1 to move around further. And that'll add or amplify your movement value. So start the game. Players will play a card right onto their player board. I'm going to take the red player's board so you can see what I mean. You're going to place it out on the spot here, the leftmost spot. This is your draw pile on the left-hand side. And to start the game, you will get to take advantage of these symbols that are printed directly on the board. They add to the value of the action you're playing. So these symbols will continue to stack up as cards get moved to the right, and they will cover these printed symbols, so they actually are only really available during your first few turns in the game, and then they're gone. And cards will eventually fall off of the player board and give you the bonus that is printed on the bottom of your card. So if you ever had this one here fall off, the lender has an X symbol at the bottom of the card. That means that the lender lets you flip a debt or a deed once it falls off of your board. So I would get to play a card directly on to my board there, and I'll just go through the actions real quick. But first, I'm going to move my Viscount according to the card I played. And this is all tracked at the top of the board here. It tells you the order of your actions. So something that you can look at here is it's actually telling you you're moving your player. So I can move 2 if I wanted to with this player and follow the arrows printed on the board, the green player. And I can, once I've finished my movement, so if I were to go 1, and then if I go 2 over here to this spot, I could choose immediately to dismiss a card. So if you're dismissing someone, I'll take this guy here, the peddler. If you're dismissing them, you're going to pay the cost at the top left of the card, and you only take the top right benefit of the card. You don't get what's printed at the bottom. That's strictly for people who recruit that player. So if I were to dismiss him, he actually lets me discard a card and put it in my discard deck, like right from my hand. So if I don't like the card that I have, I can choose to discard from my hand or from the draw pile that I have coming up. I can look through it. You don't get to discard from your discard pile, obviously, so I would discard one of the cards in my hand and dismiss them. That means they're gone from the game. And then I would proceed to do any of the 4 actions, the main actions. So these actions, they start with, on the player board, the trading symbol, which is how many of these blue bags that you have printed on the player board. And every 2 of them will gain you an action generally, but they are printed on the board. So this one takes, for instance, 4 trading actions to do a flip of a debt or a deed card. And you can always add to the value, add extra bags by paying 1 single coin. So the 1 coin will allow you to add to the value of that. And if you were doing a building action, you would look at how many hammer symbols that you've played. So if you played this here, for instance, you would get the hammer and you would add it to the hammer that's already printed on the board in your first turn. And that would give you a value where you're trying to go for a minimum of 3 to build the workshop. The trading post takes a little bit more, it takes 5. And if you're building this hall here, it's 7. So you need to have a combination of either 7 hammers or 7 stones altogether as printed on the board. If you were going to try to place a worker in the castle, you would do the noble action, and that is this gold crown here, which I'll show you an example of. So that crown on the squire here tells you that you have that, and you also rely on the one there, and it uses gold to augment that action. So you can actually follow this leftmost, top left guide here. If you spend a gold, and you can add an extra meeple. So in this case, I only have 2 noble actions. I have one on my card, and I have one printed on the board for a combination of 2. So I can add one, pay 1 gold out of my supply to do the 3 value action, which is only 2 of these meeples placed out on the tiers. Now, the important thing to remember is that if you're doing a building action or a trading action, those all take place on the outer circle of the board. But if you needed to do a noble action or a transcribe a manuscript action, you need to move your Viscount down to the inner circle and follow the arrows down there. So that is something to consider when you're moving. So if I was doing this noble action, I'd have to be on the inside track here, and I would have the green guy, in there, and I would put the meeples only in the spot that I'm directly in front of. And if there were ever 3 of my color in one tier at the bottom, one would actually ascend up to the second tier, and I would immediately take the bonus, and the 2 remaining at the bottom would move counterclockwise and clockwise on the first tier, and that could lead to combinations or stacking of benefits or bonuses, because if I moved my player over there, now there's 3 or more of my color there, we would again do the same thing where another one would ascend and others would move clockwise and counterclockwise on the first tier, and they would move up. And your goal ultimately with dropping off workers on this spot is to try to get your worker to the middle spot. When if you're the first person there, you get to gain this castle bonus card here, which gives you 5 VP at the end of the game, and it gives you an extra card in your hand because you only have 3 allowed in your hand. Lets you have 4 for the remainder of the game because it's an ongoing action. And why do you want to be in the middle as well? Well, you also have this reference card that tells you that for every one in the center, you're going to get 3 VP per meeple. If you have them on the second tier, you're going to get 2. And if you're on the outer tier at the end of the game, you're going to get 1 VP per meeple that you've placed there. Another thing about the worker placement action in the castle is that if you, during the castle movements, if you're bumped off, which means once the player has finished all their movements, if there's ever 3 or more, regardless of color, in a spot, the first or second tier, you actually get bumped off the castle. You can never be bumped off the 3rd center tier, but if you are kicked off the castle, you can choose to kick yourself off or your opponent, depending, it's the active player's choice. You would get the bonus of 2 coins if you're kicked off the 1st tier, or you get a virtue and a gold, or a good of your choice if you're kicked off of the 2nd tier. So you could choose gold and inkwell or stone if you're kicked off the 2nd tier, or you could kick your own player off if you wanted to gain that bonus yourself. So that would be the worker placement action, as I mentioned, that you can augment with the gold as printed on the player board. And the next choice that you can have, depending on the card you played, is the transcribing a manuscript action, which allows you to look at the symbols, how many crosses, black crosses you have, and you can augment that action with these little inkwell tokens, and you are trying to get the value printed on these manuscripts down here to obtain that manuscript. This one is 3. Another thing to look at is that there are black, blue, yellow, and gray banners printed on these manuscripts. That's a set collection that you're trying to do, where you will score points for how many sets you've completed by the end of the game. So if you had 1 set, you get 1 VP. If you get 2 sets, 4, and 3, you get 9. And if you had 4 sets, you're gonna get 16 VP, which is pretty huge. Another thing about the manuscripts is if you ever had 3 of a certain color, there are bonuses that are grabbed here in the cleric bonus card. So the blue one, for example, if you had 3, you would immediately take this. It gives you 2 trading actions as an ongoing bonus. You can see it has the ongoing symbol there. And that will allow you to add those values to whatever trading action you're doing. So it is a good thing to have. Just remember it's out there, easy to forget. that you will add that to your action and not have to pay as many coins, maybe. And there are different cleric bonus cards for different colors. As soon as you get 3, you'll go for that. Once you take a manuscript, you flip over the next one that's face down so that the next player or yourself can go for that one. And again, you have to be on the inside track to get the transcribe a manuscript. You have to be in this inner circle. You can't be on the outer circle for that one. And finally, in your action, after you've done one of the 4 main actions that I've talked about, the player board tells you that you are able to recruit somebody. So if I wanted to recruit someone, it would be only the card that's in the area of my Viscount, and I could pay the cost of that card. So in this case, for the bishop, on the green player's turn, they could pay $3 to recruit this person. When a player is recruited, it goes into the discard pile. It does not get placed in the draw pile. It goes immediately to discard, and you take the bonus that is depicted on the top right corner of the card under the plus symbol. So you would gain a debt from the limited supply that we've created according to player count. And then you're going to resolve any collisions, and that would mean if your corruption and your virtue ever collide with one another, there are different things, like if you play a criminal, which I didn't mention as a bonus action yet, but if one of your cards had this purple symbol here, you would immediately move your corruption to the right, and that if they ever met up and they were ever on top of each other, you would get whatever the bonus printed at the top is, and your opponent gets the whatever's printed at the bottom. Now this is can be changed if you have a second workshop built up here. If this building is missing and you have no criminals on your board, you actually would gain a virtue instead of gaining any of these kind of penalties at the bottom. It's not really that great. This one lets you shuffle the cards on your board, which is nice because then you can control when they fall off. And as I mentioned, in case you forgot, if the cards do fall off, once you've played your 4th card, that would happen in the beginning of the turn. You'll take the immediate bonus with the X on it. So this one would give you a debt and a coin. Again, like I may have mentioned, any ongoing abilities when they're on your player board, they give you a something that you can use while it's on your player board. As soon as it drops off, though, it doesn't apply any longer. And then there's immediate ones with a lightning bolt, where as soon as you play that card, you take that bonus. So the financier will give you 2 coins, and you can discard a card from your hand. If you're ever destroying a card, like I may have mentioned, you get the value of the card printed in the top left, and it's removed from the game. So that might be something you might do. You might want to get rid of this criminal or this thief here because you don't want to get the penalty of the debt every time that they fall off of your player board. Something you can control what kind of deck you make and the townsfolk you recruit. Once the deeds or the debts have been fully depleted, or 12 have been removed of either one, it could be both, which is called a divided kingdom. But if, let's say, all the red deeds were depleted, then we would resolve the prosperity ending, where it actually gives you VP for the amount of debts that you've flipped over, and that's printed right on this card here for reference, so you know. And if you're the player with the most debts flipped over, you're going to get 12. If you're the second most player, you get 8, and third, you're going to get 4th. Anyone after that doesn't get anything if you're playing with more players. And if you're doing the poverty, which means there's a lot of debt, and you've depleted the debt pile, it's the same exact thing, but it relies on how many deeds have been flipped over, and you would score those VPs according to that. More things for endgame scoring are printed on your card here. As I mentioned, you're going to get points for where your workers are placed in the castle. You're going to get points for your sets of manuscripts. You're also going to get points for how many buildings you've built out of all of these building choices. So 4, 9, 15. If you did the 3 trading posts, you get 15. That's all printed right there. And you get the VPs printed on your deeds. If you have not flipped them, you get 1. If you flip them, you get 3. Debts, you're going to lose 2 if you haven't flipped it. If you have flipped it, you only gained a good when you did so, and there's no final scoring for that unless it's a prosperity ending. And that is how you play the game, and that is how you score the game. And the player with the most victory points will win the game. There are different modifiers as well that give you end game scoring. Like for instance, one of these manuscripts will actually, if you had collected this, you would get a VP for every criminal symbol that's in your deck. So that's what that means. There are different ones for you to look through, lots of different scoring in that on the manuscripts, but they're generally for cards you have, or for amount of buildings built or amount of manuscripts you have, different stuff like that, so that adds to your score as well. There are some solo play rules that I'm not at liberty to discuss here, but perhaps another video one day I will go through the solo scoring. And that is how you play. Another thing I may have mentioned during the video is you would get points for your cleric cards, or if you were the first one in the center of the castle, you're gonna get those 5 VPs or the 3 VPs. That is all added at the end of the game, and that's how you play.
Hey everyone, welcome back for our review of Viscounts of the West Kingdom. So for this one, when I first saw this game played, I was watching a bunch of reviews, watching it played, and I did not like the look of the board. I didn't think I would like it nearly as much as Paladins. As you know, if you've watched our previous reviews, I do like Paladins more than Architects, and so does Vic. So I didn't think this would live up to expectations really at all. I thought it might be a drop, because Paladins was really creative, and I felt it was innovative the way it was doing it. I felt this one was going to be a drop off. Just seeing that circular board and the horse moving around or whatever, I was like, this one might not really work. Now they say in complexity it's somewhere between Paladins and Architects, but I feel that this is more complex than Paladins. Just me. I don't know if that's how it's rated on BGG, but just playing it, I felt like Paladins was more straightforward, and this one wasn't. It wasn't that intuitive. I had to look up rules more often than I do in Paladins. I don't think that's just, I think that's, I would say it's because I'm so familiar with Paladins, but at the beginning of Paladins, I wasn't looking at the rule book very much. So, things I like, this game is beyond clever. This game is more clever than Paladins. Everything is so interlocked. There's no bad decision as far as what you want to go for to win. I feel like you can win so many different ways. If you want to focus on the tower in the middle, do it. If you want to get these little scripts here, these guys, manuscripts, do it. You can win that way. You can win going up the tower. You can win all these different ways, building out buildings, because the buildings really do give you good multipliers. You think you're not getting much when you build a building. Oh, I get an ink blot or an ink, but no, you actually get a ton of points. They multiply up if you focus on one area. Last time we played, I focused on that hard. I got almost every building. The only ones I neglected were the really ones that were like 3, the smaller ones. So I got all the big buildings out there. And yeah, it's just, wow. Just so many great decisions in this game. I love it. I love this game. Negatives. So I talked about the complexity. It's not like it's the most complex game in the world. I just felt like it wasn't as streamlined as Paladins was. And maybe for some people, Paladins isn't streamlined. For me, it is. Especially compared to this game. So just doing that tower action and just, there is some complexity. It's not as streamlined as you would like when you're doing that tower, when you're going up those steps and things are, cycling off, or things are getting bumped, and then you can move up, and then that can trigger something that cycles out 2 people to adjacent areas. That part, it really did not win me over. I still do that action, even though, just because it gives you points, and it is, it's a viable way to win. You can just focus on that. So it's not like, I'm not docking it huge, it's just that it's not as streamlined, so I am docking it there. But the cleverness of it brings it right back up. This game is so clever. I don't know how Shem Phillips designed this game, because I don't know how you think of this. This is really clever. So it brings it up, some axes bring it up, some bring it down, and it's going to round out to an 8.9, just barely. I was so torn which one I liked better. I like Paladin slightly better. So at the end of the day, 8.9 for Viscounts. All
right. For me, get out of neck on the cleverness of the game. I like the different routes you can go to win the game. I like the collection of cards and how the times we've played it, we've only played it at 2 players. We haven't played it with more than 2. But the chance to get different cards that I haven't seen before, I had a couple of them that you could use resources to equal 2 of the crosses. What is that? I forget the name of that.
Monastery?
The monastery points, whatever that is. You let me know in the comments, flame me. It's fine. That was cool. The fact that you can use those little bag symbols. That was another thing I was using to my advantage, was the cards with the ongoing abilities. Those are really clever, especially when you get a chance to reshuffle the ones on your board, and you can choose to keep something going. If you've got a good thing going and you want to keep it up, you can move that thing from falling off, but then maybe you want something to fall off so you can get that bonus sooner. I do appreciate that they have different mechanisms and thought that goes into the cards you're collecting. The criminal component being a wild, very interesting. Having an effect when it comes to the collision of your opponent, and oh, do you have a criminal on your board? Okay, now it's going to affect you even if you have your second workshop built. There is always something to consider when you have criminals in your deck. The ability to destroy cards from your deck, so you're kind of deck building in a way where you're getting rid of cards out. You have a set that you start with, and then you can upgrade and add people. The way you can discard cards and then also add somebody in the same turn is nice as well. Really enjoy the different ways that we can win. As Nick mentioned with the workers and the castle, I don't want to say and admit this, but we did have to reference the rules quite a few times just to make sure we were understanding who was moving up what tier, who got left, who was going counterclockwise and clockwise, and just making sure we were doing it right, because the first time we played, and it was my fault because I was teaching the game, I neglected to really read through that section, and Nick was just, it was crazy in the center of that castle. It was just boop, 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 going up there, and then, you know, we said something isn't right about this, and we were playing it the first, like, is this the game, really? And yeah, turns out something wasn't right about that.
About bumping people and whatnot. That was just our first play. That was when we first got the game.
Yeah, so we learned our lessons. We played it properly after that. And I just enjoy the game. I don't even consider anything really negative. I like the prosperity ending or the poverty ending. The way it changes depending on what cards have been taken. That'll factor in either flipped debts or flipped deeds, depending on how the game ends. Just so many clever things, like Nick said. It's well thought out. So I give the game the same score as Nick, actually, an 8.9.
Awesome.
This game is my favorite of the series. I just love the different ways you can go, and the consideration of how far you're going to move, how you can move up and down and all around the center, and it's just so thoughtful. And I found the actions to be very quick. I wasn't waiting that long for Nick to get done a turn. I mean, I went to go make a tea, and he's like, oh, it's your turn already. I'm like, oh, but I got to make a drink. So it goes boom, 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 I find. It's really not that involved. Like, you just go in, and if you know me, you know I love reference cards. And this card, the player board itself, has it clearly articulated what's going on. Everything is symbolized for you. And once you get those symbols down pat, which really repeat themselves a lot from previous games, there's some new ones, I think, but not anything too crazy. And you really, once you learn them, you're like able to know right away what that is. A little bit like Nick said, though, you have to reference, like, okay, we're destroying a card, but you're taking it from your draw pile or your hand. That's different, because usually you're not looking through your draw pile. So that's something that, oh, really? Oh, okay. So some things are less intuitive, I suppose. But this game takes the cake for me out of the 3 games. I strongly recommend the game. I have a lot of fun. Interested to see how it plays with more players.
Yeah, because look at the middle of this board of 2 players.
Yeah.
So, like, you see us looking down. We have a game in front of us. So, like, looking at things, trying to recall things. So that's what we're looking at when we're looking this way, not the camera. We're looking at this thing. So right now, we already have a mosh pit right here in a 2-player game. Could you imagine 5 to 6 players? Because I don't know. I don't know how. We're already struggling to fit people at the top.
Yeah.
But then again, maybe we focus on it too much. I don't know. I don't think so.
Maybe it would deter you, perhaps.
No, I don't think.
Stay away from that castle, Nick.
No, just lay on top of each other.
We stack them up. I don't know, unless you're supposed to leave, but that you score points to be in the middle, so I don't.
Yeah, you can't leave.
You couldn't leave. But yeah, even, the way you're moving your horse, if you, move around, somebody goes to a spot that you're at, oh, now you can reshuffle your playboard. So many things are thought out. Pick up this game if you haven't already. Try the series. There's really no bad game, in my opinion.
No
they're
bad
all
game.
They're all great. They're really good.
Depends what you're looking for, right?
Mm-hmm.
This one, I guess it won because I scored it 1/10 less, but our average is 8.9 on this one, and the other one's 88.5. So this one is the one that won. So there you go. Viscounts won, edged out Paladins.
Just did, but it was
I
tough.
slightly disagree.
It was
but that's not
hard. It was hard.
It's here nor there. It's really, I can take it or leave it.
Maybe I played too much Paladins, and it's the novelty of this one because this is a newer game. We
Cult
just
of the
got
New.
this one, yeah. We just got this one in December. Somebody gave us a gift card for Amazon for our wedding, so we picked it up using that.
My first play, I was thinking, did this just beat Paladins? In the end, it did not ultimately for me, but it did for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you liked this video. Let us know in the comments below what your favorite of the West Kingdom series is. Did you agree with me, Nick, neither of us? Do you hate all of the games? Do you love them all equally? How do you feel? Like this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to our channel, and we will see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.